Good afternoon and welcome to Seminole County's 5th Lunch and Learn session. Today's topic is students with disabilities, their educational and behavioral needs. My name is Michelle Walsh. I'm the Executive Director of Student Support Services, and welcome. Just a reminder for all of you that kindergarten registration is still open and families that haven't registered may do so. We encourage you to go online at www.scps.k12.us and register your child. Just as a reminder as well, at the conclusion of this session, Riza Safanti will go ahead and translate the session in Spanish. So, welcome. We have a list of questions that were addressed or asked of us, and I will be rotating among our guests today. The first question I will address, though, is my child has an IEP, and with instruction for the last 9 weeks being at home, I would like to retain my child for the next school year. So this is a question that we have been getting from school principals and from school staff, and this is not a decision to make lightly. What we do, and we say to all of our parents contemplating a retention that is not forced through third grade retention, we say, think of the end in mind. So we want you to paint a picture of what you see your child doing down the road, and that decision will drive whether or not we look at a retention for your child. We also take a look at a couple of different factors. We want to look at the data. The data drives decision making, and we want to see what your child was doing when your child was in a brick and mortar school during the first 3 quarters of school. So this 4th quarter is only one piece of the data. I encourage you to reach out to your school principal. A meeting should be set up with experts that know your child best, with you included, and that decision should be thought about, talked about, and derived with everyone giving input. I also had a question regarding extended school year, otherwise known as ESY for our students. Typically, we hold those meetings now to discuss what ESY will look like, or if your child needs ESY services during the summer. As all of you are kind of waiting to find out what is going to happen, and we're waiting for the governor's task force to make some decisions, we will also kind of wait for those decisions to be made, but we are beginning our planning stages. So you'll still have those meetings. We will discuss whether or not there is a need, and later will be a determination if that will be face-to-face or through distance learning. Now, with the face-to-face decision, we have to take everything into account. We will have every department helping us to determine how to safely conduct any face-to-face instruction if that decision is a good one for your child. So we'll be doing that very soon. So you should be hearing from your schools very soon. So first question for Dr. Tanya Shores, Executive Director, or as the Director of ESE Services. Dr. Shores, 504 and IEP students are often accommodated in the classroom via extended time. In a distance learning environment, extended time isn't as fixed. How is this accommodation addressed?
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I want to kind of hit a couple hot topics related to this. I do want to let everybody know that as we were preparing for distance learning, this was something that we took into consideration, the need for students who require specific accommodations, but also students who maybe require modifications to their curriculum. So I do want everyone to understand that part of what we worked through as a school district is that the Department of Teaching and Learning developed curriculum, and that our department looked at this content and supported teachers with how to accommodate student needs related to the distance learning environment, or for students who are on access points, perhaps provide some modifications to that content. Students' case managers have reached out to parents to discuss how student needs for supplementary aids and services, as well as accommodations, can be provided in a distance learning environment. For students who have an individual education plan, an IEP, or an educational plan, an EP, case managers have developed a temporary distance learning plan in collaboration with each parent to document how students are being supported. This support would include the provision of related services in a distance learning environment as well. For students who have a 504 plan, if that student receives accommodations and a particular accommodation cannot be provided due to distance learning, or if a student requires additional support to be successful with distance learning, the 504 team can collaborate with parents to address these needs. Our teams are working hard to support students who require brailled materials, sign language interpreters, and many other accommodations that are a required component of an IEP or a 504 plan. Extended time might not be needed in a distance learning environment due to the nature of distance learning and that the schedule is a little bit more flexible. But if you find your child requires extra time or other accommodations that are not being provided, please reach out to your child's case manager or school counselor. It could be that due to the coordination of efforts in providing various assignments over various topics that we're losing some pieces that were in place in a face-to-face school environment. So we encourage you to collaborate with your children's teachers in order to address those concerns and perhaps need for additional time that isn't being provided.
Thank you very much. My child refuses to do any work, and my relationship with him is more important than his academics. What happens if he does nothing while we are doing distance learning from the home? I think Clayton, one of our school psychologists, Clayton Crow, please will address that question.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I definitely want to start off by saying that I agree that your relationship is more important than your child's academics at this time. We really have turned education upside down during this pandemic, and it's okay if your child isn't as productive as they were when they were at school. Just be understanding of how confusing this must be for them to have home suddenly become the school environment. We definitely empathize with you as parents, having to be the parent and the teacher at the same time. You can work with your teacher to make this distance learning experience flexible for your child. I mean, every child's needs are going to be unique and different, and we can be flexible at this time to address those needs. To give you some ideas, maybe, of what you might be able to do, we're really fighting this battle at home between preferred and non-preferred activities, and schoolwork is very often a non-preferred activity for some of our students with special needs. So some things that you might be able to do as parents, you want to set up a very consistent schedule, and we'll talk about this more in a second, I think, but having a consistent schedule and expectations at home will alleviate some of those problem behaviors you might be experiencing that are preventing your child from getting some of their schoolwork done. If you can set up a system where you are the good guy, you're delivering all of these great rewards for your child at home, all those preferred activities that they usually want to engage in, that's going to be really effective. Just make sure you have control over all of those preferred activities at home, and then set up a system where those preferred activities become the reward for engaging in some of the schoolwork. We may not be able to start off with finishing all of the schoolwork, but our goal right now as educators is we want learning to continue during this distance learning time. So if we get a little bit done, that's going to be better than getting nothing done at all. So we can focus on starting small and working up from there. But like I said, just make those rewards, those preferred activities, the reward for engaging in some schoolwork. It might just be a simple first in, so first do this task that's short, 5 minutes of work, and then you can have access to your favorite preferred thing. Or you might consider something like a token economy at home where you're giving tokens throughout the day. You could do something as simple as pennies. Give them tokens while they're engaging in their schoolwork, just little bits at a time. The idea is that you give lots of tokens, and then you can just set prices in tokens for those favorite things that they want to do at home, whether that's watching TV or playing video games or swimming in the pool or eating ice cream. Just set a price in tokens, and then you start small, reinforce them for engaging in a little bit of work, and then just go from there. And like I said, getting a little bit of learning at this time is better than nothing. So work with your teacher to find what works for your student. The last thing I want to mention is that if your child's a child that has a behavior intervention plan at school, you can reach out to your school psychologist that's assigned to your school, or your school counselor or your teacher. And what we might be able to do is adapt some of the strategies on their behavior intervention plan at home to work well in their behavior intervention plan at school to work well in the home environment. So we want to share with you just an example of a behavior intervention plan Cliff's Notes version or a behavior intervention plan one-pager. It's just an overview of what it might look like if you reach out to your school psychologist to get some tips about behavior strategies at home. based upon your child's behavior intervention plan. Just know that if you're struggling at home, there are lots of people who are willing to help. So reach out to your teacher, your school psychologist, or your school counselor and set up a time to just chat about what's going on at home and how we can make it flexible and work better for you. And just know we're all here and we're willing to help.
Thank you, Clayton. Just a reminder that you have to be kind and compassionate to yourself and to your child. And so you're going to have to build in a schedule that works for both of you. And that is exactly it. Reach out to folks for assistance. You're not in this alone. We will work with you. So I have a question for you, Kathy Chelberg, one of our school teachers that works with our department and curriculum project. The work is too hard for my daughter, and she needs someone with her the entire time. How am I supposed to work at home if she needs me beside her all day?
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. This definitely is a challenge, and one of the ways that we would like people is first to communicate with your child's teacher. Let them know that your child is struggling with their assignments and that you feel like they have the need for you to be there all day during every activity. As Clayton had mentioned, it's really important to have a schedule. If you set up a schedule and you want to alternate between some of those preferred and non-preferred tasks, you want to have some assignments that are easy and some that are a little bit more difficult and would require a little bit more attention. We want to think about what their schedule was like at school. At school, they may have had a block of time where they did some reading activities and another block of time where they did some math activities. They would also have specials that they would go to and engage in. They would have recess time and lunchtime. So all of those components really need to be built into a schedule that could be followed and hopefully would give everybody a little bit more breathing time. One of the things that can be very helpful is in talking to the teacher. Most teachers throughout the school day have opportunities for individual students to work on what we call independent activities. So it might be a craft, it might be a sensory activity that they work on and that they complete. It might be some storybooks that they listen to. So all of those could be infused in this schedule. And again, hopefully give everybody a little bit more breathing space, give mom or dad an opportunity to get their work done, and also continue to build that independence. And again, kind of tagging along with what Clayton had said, if you use a reward system, or an if-then card where if they do this, then this happens, you can encourage that independence and reward them for the activities that they are completing on their own. But again, please make sure you're reaching out to your teacher and letting them know that your child is really struggling and it is being very difficult.
Thank you, Kathy. Dr. Shores, I have a question for you. A parent said, I suspect my child has a learning disability and requested that my child be tested. This was before school closed down and we went to distance learning. What are our next steps and what will happen from here on out?
So thank you, Dr. Walsh. For our students who are in the process of being evaluated, school districts are still required to meet those timelines. So for students who are being evaluated because they're suspected of having a disability, such as a learning disability, that's a 60 calendar day timeline, and there's a 90 calendar day requirement for students who are suspected to be gifted. So parents who signed permission for an evaluation prior to school closure with an evaluation due date before the end of the school year were contacted by school psychologists or other members of their school team to determine if parents wanted to proceed with these evaluations at this time during school closure. Evaluation due dates prior to the end of April were prioritized, and students may have already participated in some components of these evaluations in a face-to-face format. We've had our school teams and our evaluators, such as our school psychologists, our speech-language pathologists, work diligently in order to secure social distancing requirements within an evaluation setting to complete some of these face-to-face evaluations. In addition to that, our school psychology team, speech-language pathology team, and other related service providers have done a tremendous amount of research and worked with national test publishing companies to determine which components of evaluations can be completed virtually and kind of what that would look like. And we're doing a variety of things using technology, whether a student is coming to a campus and using a computer there in order to complete a virtual assessment with a school psychologist, or doing that from their home, depending on the nature of that assessment. In addition, parents are still being given interview measures or rating scale measures that they would then return to the school psychologist as components of those assessments. And all of those evaluations virtually are in process at this time. Evaluators and school contacts will be reaching out to parents of students who are in the process of being evaluated on an individual basis to discuss the particulars of these evaluations and what they may look like now, because they likely had those discussions prior during a meeting when they said, I'll pull your child out of class and we'll work on X, Y, and Z together. So obviously now that will look a little bit different. And during those discussions, they will schedule necessary test sessions in order to work through those evaluations. From there, you will have a meeting at your child's school virtually, and they will discuss the outcome of those evaluations and determine eligibility with the support and participation of a student study team.
Thank you, Tanya. My child is acting out and not acting like the sunny, happy child I have always known. Should I be worried? Mr. Crow, could you answer that question?
Yes, absolutely. I think it wouldn't be unexpected that you would see some changes in your child's behavior during this time, their behavior and their demeanor. It's been a huge life change for school to just suddenly stop. That's a big piece of children's lives. And this pandemic could be considered, in some ways, a traumatic experience in our children's lives. So really focus on supporting your children emotionally at this time. We talked about earlier that our academics do come second to that social emotional learning at this time. Many of our teachers are working on providing social emotional learning activities for their students during this time, but just that social emotional learning about understanding what's happening in the world right now and how they can cope with that is, I think, more important than ever. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions about how your child is feeling and really support them in what they're going through at this time. Try to understand and try to help them to cope with these big feelings they might be having. And ultimately, if you're concerned about a behavior change or some mental health experiences that your child is having, please reach out to your school counselor at your school. There are still supports available for mental health and for social emotional learning through the schools at this time. And there are lots of people that are still willing to help. So please reach out with any concerns, even if it's something minor. Reach out to your school counselor or go through your teacher to find out if there's some more mental health supports that are available for your child.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to remember that this is difficult for all of us, even adults having opportunities in the past to go to the movie theater and go out to dinner. We're not able to do that, and it does affect how we feel. So we need to address it and care for the child and look at that social emotional learning. Thank you. If it persists and you continue having these concerns, please bring it to the IEP team meeting. There are some related services that we can assist your child with and kind of take a look at what those needs would look like for your child if there are some other things that we need to address. So our last question is for Kathy. My child is having difficulty navigating, adjusting to this distance learning. He is nonverbal, does not understand why his teacher is on a computer screen, and cooperates some days and others will not cooperate. Not really a question associated, but an experience for a family and a parent. Could you give some suggestions?
Absolutely, thank you. Can only begin to imagine. We know how difficult the whole distance learning experience has been for everybody, really. It's an entire change. So for a child who is nonverbal and who struggles a little bit more, it would even be more difficult. And in all cases in the past, this child has seen their teacher face-to-face, been very comfortable. It's probably been a smaller group setting. So all of a sudden to see a face on a screen and not a live person is going to take some adjustment. And we've had these conversations with a couple of teachers. A couple of teachers have shared some experiences that they have had in trying to help students adjust to this distance learning. And sometimes having activities that are fun, maybe a social time where they've done a social story, or for younger children, it might be a music time where everybody can be engaged in something that's fun and enjoyable for everybody. And the child may begin to feel a little bit more settled seeing that. And it may be that from the very beginning, you have to start with just small snippets of time. They might not be able to do if a circle time went for 15 or 20 minutes. That might be too much for them in the beginning. So it might have to start at 5 minutes. And again, if they make that 5 minutes, reinforce that 5 minutes, and then maybe the next day go to 7 minutes, and then slowly build that up so that the time increases. I know we've had some stories shared with us where when students have seen some of their peers on the computer through Google Chats or WebEx, where they've gotten to see one another's faces, they've been very excited about that. So I think really trying to find some things, and again, working with the teacher and letting them know that, they're not willing to do the things online. And sometimes I had one parent who they started with a laptop, and the child would close the laptop every day when the teacher came on because they didn't expect to see their teacher on the laptop. And mom realized she could set the laptop, attach it to their TV, and then the teacher was very large and live on the TV, and the child couldn't turn the TV off at that point. So they slowly worked towards getting him to feel more comfortable. So those are just a few suggestions, but it's going to take time, and we have to be patient.
Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for today. We'll go ahead and have Riza interpret for us.
Muy buenas tardes a todos nuestros padres hispanohablantes de Seminole County Public School. Esta tarde hemos tratado el tema de educación especial y todos los retos que tenemos en la casa. Algunas de las preguntas, la primera fue, mi hijo tiene un plan de educación individualizado y con el hecho de que la instrucción de las últimas 9 semanas ha sido en casa, quiero que repita el año en el próximo año escolar. La respuesta fue, repetir el año escolar se debe hacer con mucho cuidado. Puede haber consecuencias no deseadas que podrían afectar negativamente a un estudiante y su progreso académico. Piensen en el panorama completo. Aunque nuestro liderazgo estatal declaró que un padre puede iniciar o solicitar que se repita el grado, debe haber una discusión con un equipo de personas de la escuela que conozca al estudiante para determinar si es lo mejor para ese estudiante. La segunda pregunta, los estudiantes con un plan 504 o un plan de educación individualizado a menudo no son acomodados en un salón de clase con tiempo prolongado. En el ámbito de aprendizaje a distancia, el tiempo que se extiende en el salón de clase no es un concepto fijo. ¿Cómo se está dirigiendo este acomodo? El Departamento aquí de Enseñanza y Aprendizaje desarrolló el currículo y le añadimos acomodos y modificamos el currículo. También hemos llamado a los padres para saber especialmente lo que tienen un plan 504, para dejarles saber que el equipo del plan 504 puede trabajar con las familias con cualquier necesidad relacionada a esto. El tiempo extendido es algo que se hace en casa con más fluidez hasta que en el salón de clase. La tercera pregunta fue, mi hijo se niega a hacer cualquier trabajo y mi relación con él es más importante que sus trabajos escolares. ¿Qué pasa si él no hace nada mientras estamos aprendiendo a distancia desde casa? La respuesta fue, está bien si el niño no está completando todo el trabajo. Recuerden que la casa es ahora su casa y también el salón de clase. El padre ahora es padre y es maestro. Debes trabajar con el maestro de su hijo para saber cómo puede ser flexible y hacer un poco a diario es mejor que hacer nada. Deben tener un horario consistente, expectativas consistentes y esas actividades que a ellos les gustan hacer como los videojuegos, esa debe ser la recompensa luego, ¿verdad? También pueden comunicarse con los psicólogos de su escuela para más estrategias. La cuarta pregunta. El trabajo es demasiado difícil para mi hijo y necesita a alguien con él el tiempo entero. ¿Cómo puedo yo trabajar en casa si me necesita al lado todo el tiempo? La respuesta. Esto sí es un reto. Deben comunicarse otra vez con sus maestros y dejarles saber cuáles son esas dificultades específicas de su hijo para completar esos trabajos que ellos mismos están asignando. Otra vez es importante hacer un horario y trabajar en las áreas que se le hace más difícil tal vez primero, ¿verdad? Cuando están más propensos a trabajar en esas cosas. Por segundo, los maestros tienen tiempo para trabajar con los estudiantes, aunque estén en sus casas, sea hacer manualidades con ellos, leerlos un libro, y así, mientras ellos están trabajando con ellos en esas cosas divertidas, usted puede hacer otra cosa en su casa y a la misma vez fomentar trabajar independientemente. Luego, después que participen en esto, la recompensa puede ser algo que le guste hacer. La quinta pregunta. Sospecho que mi hijo tiene una discapacidad de aprendizaje y solicité que mi hijo se le realizara la prueba. ¿Cuándo se hará la prueba a mi hija? ¿Cuándo se le hará la prueba a mi hijo? La respuesta fue, los estudiantes ya en el proceso, antes que todo esto pasara, se le van a hacer las pruebas. Los equipos están comunicándose actualmente con esas familias para saber si todavía quieren continuarlo en estos momentos o posponer esas pruebas. Ya hemos consultado con los expertos para ver cuáles partes de la prueba se puede hacer virtualmente y los otros se les habla con los padres para ver cómo se reúnen otra vez con los protocolos de distanciamiento, ¿verdad? Y eso sería entonces los padres que van a decidir. Número 6, mi hijo se está portando mal. No está actuando como el niño feliz y alegre que siempre he conocido. ¿Debería estar preocupado? La respuesta fue, es normal que vea cambios. Para todos esto es algo nuevo y muy diferente. Lo más importante es el apoyo emocional. Sus trabajos son secundarios a este apoyo. Ser más comprensibles y ayudarles a manejar esos cambios. Comunicarse con los consejeros de la escuela que todavía están trabajando y dispuestos a ayudarles. Y saber que también de parte de ellos pueden saber de más servicios que hay disponibles para ellos. Y por último, mi hijo está teniendo dificultades para navegar y adaptarse al aprendizaje a distancia. No es verbal y no entiende por qué su maestro está detrás de una pantalla de computadora y coopera algunos días y no coopera otros días. La respuesta, el aprendizaje a distancia es difícil para todos, pero para un niño no verbal es más un reto. Ya está acostumbrado a ver a su maestro en persona y es un ajuste grande. Los maestros han empezado a hacer actividades divertidas como tiempo de música. Y al principio, el tiempo de aprendizaje puede empezar con un periodo corto de 5 minutos y luego cada día traten de añadirle más tiempo al aprendizaje. Otra vez, comuníquese con el maestro. A veces viendo al maestro en pantalla o agrandándolo en vez de en la tableta o la computadora, si pueden conectar a una televisión y ven el maestro más grande, eso a veces ayuda. Esas son algunas de las anécdotas que han reportado las maestras. Y a veces incluirlo en esas sesiones a donde pueden ver sus otros compañeros de clase. Quiero recordarles, esa es la última pregunta, pero quiero recordarles que estamos en el tiempo de inscribir a los niños al jardín de infantes y si necesitan más información, porque esto fue relámpago de rápido, el número 407-871-1115 está disponible en español para cualquier pregunta, duda o preocupación que tengan. Gracias.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. That concludes today's Facebook Live session. Have a good